Okay, I'm excited to be talking to you guys today about knowing when not to take your supplements or knowing when to do an appropriate diet for your adrenal fatigue. So I know it can be very overwhelming when you're suffering with an adrenal fatigue problem. What is the best supplement for me to take? Or what's the best protocol for me to do? Or what's the best diet for me to do? And I get that question probably the most. What's the best supplement for adrenal fatigue? And while that can be very overwhelming and very frustrating or time consuming or expensive, right? Because you look at your cabinet or your pantry and you got 1,001 different supplements. Just talked to someone today who spent over $3,000 of supplements alone last month. Whether you're wondering what's the best supplement to be taking can be very frustrating, like I was saying. What can be equally detrimental is knowing when not to take the supplements. Let me say that again, knowing when not to take the supplements. So I want to talk to you about that today. And also I want to talk to you about knowing like, hey, what's the best diet for me to do, but knowing when to vary that diet, right? Because there are times of the month, circadian rhythm, times of the day, times of your life where you're under more stress, less stress, you have more inflammation, less inflammation, and one perfect diet is not fitting for every person, especially based on their genetics. So my name is Dr. Joel Rosen. I am the Adrenal Fatigue Recovery Ninja, and today I want to talk to you about knowing the best supplements to when not to take them. Okay, so let's talk about that. So first and foremost, I want you to understand that it starts with proper testing, right? And I'll give you an example. So I made this mistake a lot of times where I would only do a saliva sample. And how many of you guys that have had that are suffering with an adrenal fatigue problem, that go to see your doctor and you tell the doctor, hey, I think I'm dealing with this thing called adrenal fatigue, and they laugh at you and they say, well, that's an internet diagnosis, so there's no such thing as that. But you want them to test you, and they give you a complete blood count. They test your cortisol, or they do an ACTH stimulation test, and they do a blood test, or maybe even you've gone out on your own, and more often than not, you've done a saliva sample, right? And the saliva sample represents the free fraction of the hormone. And what that means is it represents 1 to 3, 4, 5% of how much hormone you have. Only 1 to 3, 4, 5% is free. Free meaning it's not bound to a protein. And in order for your hormones to work, they can't be bound to a protein. They have to be able to enter the cell free of any protein. So saliva samples are good. They can tell us, and we can extrapolate, hey, if you have a high free fraction, probably you have a high total fraction. If you have a low free fraction, probably you have a low total fraction. But it's a probably based on 95, 97%. It's a big guess. And when I started doing the Dutch test and seeing that people had really high free fractions and really low metabolized cortisol, how much did they produce for the day? And then I was doing a protocol to lower their what was assumed to be high cortisol when it was high free fraction that only represent 1 to 3, 4%. And it turned out that they had low metabolized, how much they produced for the day, then it didn't matter, knowing what the best supplement was, right? Because the approach was wrong. Think about that. So is your approach right? Are you doing the proper tests? If you're not doing the proper tests, then it doesn't matter when not to take something or when to take something or what the best supplement to take is, because you're making false conclusions on false facts. And it happens every day. It happens every day. So that's the first thing. And that applies to genetic testing too, especially for diets. I know there's a lot of frustration with, should I go on a low histamine diet? Should I go on a low oxalate diet? Should I go on an autoimmune diet? Should I go gluten-free? Should I go on a SIBO diet? At the end of the day, when I go on all these things, I have oxalates, I have high histamines, I'm autoimmune, and I look at all the lists that I can eat for each one of them, it leaves me with nothing. It leaves me with air. I got air. I can eat air. And so you don't know what to do. But I would defer to the genetics. I would, because the genetics, people ask me all the time, why do I have to do genetics? And I've done several videos on this. So make sure you check out the YouTube channel, Your Adrenal Fix. Make sure you subscribe to that YouTube channel so that you can see what I talk about when it comes to genetics. And even just today, I was talking to someone who has lung problems, and I said, you should do a genetic test. And she said, well, lung disease doesn't run in the family. And people want that slam dunk gene, the gene that says, this is the woe to all your problems. And there is no slam dunk gene. But what the genes do is tell us about your susceptibilities, and your susceptibilities in producing energy and dealing with stress and repairing your body and putting out fires and dealing with hormones, and being able to make energy. And so especially, we need to be able to make energy by combusting, by putting on the flame, protein, carbs, and fats. And in me, I'm a horrible combustor of fats. As much as I'd like to do a ketogenic diet, as much as I love my bulletproof coffee, I love my bulletproof coffee. Nothing makes me more excited in the morning when I go to I don't even think it's called the Bullet or whatever it's called, and I put the coffee in there, and then I put a nice stick of butter in there, and I put a little MCT oil, I turn it on, it starts to turn yellow, and I get so excited. But only to find out that I have really crappy genes for burning fat. And the proof is in the pudding, literally. I've gone up several percentages of body fat, and I've been exercising. It doesn't make sense. So the best diet is not the diet that I hear everyone is reading or talking about. Hey, keto is really great. It could be good. I think you should become keto adaptive. I think you should be metabolically flexible, but you need the proper test. That's the bottom line, is what I'm saying, is you need the proper test to know what the best supplements to be taking is in the first place, and thereby knowing when not to take the supplements. And genetic tests are really great for that. It will tell you, are you a good combustor of protein, carbs, and fats? Do you make the raw materials that help shuttle the protein, carbs, and fats into the cell? Do you make the cofactors that help shuttle that into the cell? An organic acid test can tell you right away if you're burning or combusting protein, carbs, and fats. So you corroborate your information. And I always say you have like a blueprint on your table, and then you put on different test results in there, and you talk to the patient, and you find out where you're navigating towards to figure out what's going on, so that you know what the best supplements to take and when not to take them. So rule number one in what's the best supplements to take and when not to take them is it starts with proper testing, proper assessments. And we talked about which ones you should be doing. So now what I want to talk to you about is a bell-shaped curve. I've talked about this before too. So a bell-shaped curve means that you can do too little of something and you can do too much of something. And too little of something is always assumed that's what's going on, right? So what do I need to know? I need to know what the best supplements are. Let's say I got the best tests and I know what I know, and I put a game plan together. Then I know I'm very low. Then I take more of a supplement and I start feeling better. And hey, if I start feeling better, more is better, right? So I'm going to take more. And then over a certain amount of time, I start feeling worse. I don't get it. This was working for me before, but now it's not working for me now. And that happens a lot with methylation nutrients, methylfolate, methylcobalamin, methionine, SAMe, BHMT or betaine hydrochloric acid, choline. It could happen with creatine. And what ultimately happens is you are taking too much of a nutrient. And because MTHFR and methylfolate is the first paragraph of the Harry Potter series, and you're saying, okay, I got this whole series figured out. I read the first paragraph. I know what's going on with the end result. That's what you're doing when you say, I know about methylfolate. I'm just going to take 6 milligrams of it. 6 milligrams, 13 milligrams. I mean, we get people on 200 micrograms. You're really going in there and blowing up your methylfolate, and you may have a lot of bridges out. that don't allow you to create a full cycle of making methionine and SAMe. And then what happens is that can produce a lot of glutamate. And glutamate is what gives you really that excited feeling. And how many of you in the room, put your hand up and tell me, how many of you guys have taken methylfolate and have gotten excited and get ramped up? That's because you got a lot of bridges out. You're taking way too much methylfolate. You read the first paragraph of Harry Potter and you're assuming that you know the conclusion, and it's not working. That's a big problem. However, here's the thing. It may be working, right? Let's say it started off and you felt really good. And then you stopped feeling good. That's when you jumped the shark, so to speak. That's when you took too much. And that happens almost all the time when I see patients and I troubleshoot with them in terms of some of the research you're doing is right on. And you know what? There is the possibility that it's working. It's working too much and you haven't commensurated your dosing strategy with your improvements. I'll give you an example of that. When people, play whack-a-mole with their thyroid medication and they start titrating up, and next thing you know, they feel too much raciness, too much heart palpitations. They've been cleaning up their diet. They've been more active. They've been getting some other good micronutrients. They're detoxing. They're doing good things. And then all of a sudden, that thyroid medication is too much, right? They haven't commensurated it. And they don't get where are they on the dial. And sometimes your program works and you don't need the same dosing that you needed on day 1 on day 10 because you're improving. So here is a takeaway piece of information is if you're doing well on a day when I woke up and oh my gosh, I'm feeling really good. That's when you know not to take any supplements on that day. That's probably a good day not to take any supplements. Now you can take your digestive support, like your hydrochloric acid, your digestive enzymes, maybe some of the support that helps you break down healthy fats. I think those things are good. Vitamin D probably is good, or your omegas are good. It's usually the methylation nutrients that get you into trouble, and you take too much of them. And they're working, and you're detoxing too much. And you chalk it up to, okay, this isn't working. It's working. It's just you're doing too much, and you got to ride that wave. Meaning when you're on a wave, you're surfing out there, you paddle out and you catch a wave. There's nothing to say you have to get off that wave and to go on another wave. That wave's fine. So the analogy is that when you're doing well on a day, when you're supplementing and they wake up the next day and you feel like you're pretty good, don't take more supplements. You don't need to. You're doing okay. It's supplements. It's supplementing your life. They're not meant to be something that you do every single day. Ultimately, you want to improve your health. You want to get your nutrients through your foods, your food choices, and you want to supplement when needed. So if I go on vacation and I don't have the same demands and I'm taking my supplements, I can go too much and I don't feel good. That's when I don't need to take it. Or I could have a big project due. I got 7 reports I got to do. I got 6 appointments in a row. I'm going to need a lot more energy. Then I take a little bit more. You got to know yourself. So that's the second rule is you really got to understand the baseline. Like, what is your baseline? Are you taking baseline numbers? How do you know if you're improving? How do you know if you're improving besides I feel better? Well, because you look at your baseline of testing. You look at your cholesterol, you look at your oxidative stress markers, you look at your respiratory rate, your heart rate, your body fat percentage, your blood pressure, your temperature. You look at your waistline, your girth, your BMI, your BMR. You look at those things and you do before and afters. And you circle the ones that need improvements. Like I see a lot of people that have really high hemoglobin, really high ferritin, really high iron, really high red blood cells, really high homocysteine, really high C-reactive protein. And they're looking for the shiny object of, okay, what's my next test? What's the best next test? The best next test is the repeat of that same test. And see, do a protocol of 1. Like do what a scientist would do. He would get initial studies. He would get baselines. He would do the proper testing to see what the problems are. She would implement a protocol to address and impact that. And then after a certain amount of reasonable time, you would retest it to see how you're improving. And glucose, ketones, body fat, body mass index, waist girth, hip girth, those are awesome things to do, and they're free. Those are free things to do. Or they may cost a little bit of money, but it doesn't cost gazillions of dollars. So baselines are really good, will help you to know when not to take something. And then the last one is prioritization and variation. So I'll give you an example on variation. I like the idea of becoming metabolically flexible. I talk about that all the time. That means that you can burn protein, carbs, and fats when you need to. Your body has the ability to fast and still be able to burn energy. And then your body has the ability to eat a lot more foods and still burn the energy. It's adaptive. It's homeostatic. That's what your adrenals do. And I came up with the term called homeopathos. When your adrenals break down, it breaks down the ability to maintain homeostasis, to regulate the behind the curtain scenes, your high blood pressure, your heart rate, your temperature, your blood pressure. It's able to regulate those things if it has lots of fuel or if it has very little fuel. It should be able to maneuver through the landmines, so to speak. But let's give an example of a female who's menstruating, and we want her to be keto adaptive. And that means we want her to be able to eat healthy fats and be able to burn those healthy fats, but also to be able to eat healthy carbs and burn those carbs, and eat healthy proteins and burn those proteins. And let's say we want to restrict her carbs. So, we just came up with a good protocol the other day where, let's say at the beginning of the month where you have your period and you have menses, you're depleted. You're losing blood, you're losing vital nutrients, you're losing iron, you're losing oxygen. Not a good time to be keto adaptive, or not keto adaptive, but to be low carb. Maybe a good time to bring up those carbs, 150 grams maybe, right? And then you get to the middle of your cycle and your estrogen's rising and your progesterone is going to take over the baton and start to rise as well. Maybe you go down to 100 grams of carbs. And then right when your progesterone's at the highest, by about the third week, where you feel really good, if you're having a good cycle and you're not having challenges there, you go down to 50. And you do variation, right? Because life is a moving carousel. You have, the difference between, I heard one time, the difference between salad and garbage is timing, right? And the difference between, one day and another day is it's a new moon, it's a new cycle, it's a new energy system, it's a new rhythm. And we're dynamic creatures, and we have to be able to listen to our body. That's really important. Prioritization. Prioritization means I am not going to be doing a liver detox when I have huge inflammatory reactions going on in my body. I am not going to go for a huge exercise program when I have no minerals. I am not going to worry about getting way more protein in my diet when I don't have even digestive secretions. So you have to look at the prioritization, and that's really answering the question of when not to take something. You don't want to take something when you're going downstream. I once had a guy tell me, okay, well, I'm aromatizing, I'm taking testosterone, and I want to know what's the best way of converting from, testosterone to E3, but I wasn't converting to E2. Now I'm converting to E3. How do I stop that? And, what's the best aromatase inhibitor? And I was like, hello, like you're like all the way down at the end of the stream. You got to put your fires out. You got to put your inflammatory fires out. Why are you aromatizing? Why is it going down that side of the train tracks? Why did it flip from the right side of the train tracks to the wrong side of the train tracks? Not because you have an aromatase inhibitor deficiency, not because of that, because you have inflammation in your body. And you get a lot of doctors that say they're integrative doctors, and they're not. They're pill pushers. They're here, take this hormone, and we'll top your levels up, and we'll naively go in there and say that there's nothing else going on in the body, and we'll put the the Band-Aid over the oil light, and you won't have low oil anymore. We'll just put a Band-Aid over it. We won't have to look at it. If we don't look at it, it's not there. So anyways, to summarize, knowing the best supplements, when to take and when not to take, starts with the proper testing. Genetic testing, Dutch testing, organic acid testing, blood testing, with all the values on there. Number two, knowing your baselines so that you can understand what's improved, what hasn't improved, and it's not just based on subjective feelings. You may be feeling not so good because things are working, and you look at your baselines and they're improving. Baselines can include heart rate, blood pressure, temperature, white blood cells, red blood cells, hematocrit, ferritin, body fat, metabolic rates, BMIs, those types of things, hips to girth ratios. And then third and final is variation and prioritization. Your life is a moving parade. You can't do the same thing. You have to commensurate your life with your demands and know when to push and when to pull. And also prioritize what's the most important thing to do. So anyways, I hope you found that really helpful. I hope you find these people tell me, hey, it's too long, you got to make them shorter. So I'm making them shorter for you guys. Give me your comments. The only thing I don't like about these Facebook Lives is when I do it through Zoom, I can't see your comments. So I'll go in there and make comments on your comments. And I always, as always, if you're suffering with this problem and you want to get that support of knowing when to take it and when not to take it, what the best tests to do and get the help that you need. We always do no obligation, no cost consultations, 45 minutes, but I always say it has to be something you got to be serious about. You got to be ready, you got to be decisive, you got to be coachable, you got to get resourceful, you got to know that your life is on the line and this means war, and you're not going to supplement it to good health. You have to be able to fix the root cause of the problem. And so I'll put the link in there, but if you want to know what it is thetruthaboutadrenalfatigue.com/apply. thetruthaboutadrenalfatigue.com/apply. Free 45-minute consult. We're not going to review your blood tests. We're not going to review your genetic tests. Don't send that to me. My goal on this call is to figure out, where are you now? What have you been doing? What's working, what's not working? What's missing? Where is it that you want to be? Why are you not getting there? If I feel I can help you get there, we're going to get you there. So anyways, I hope you enjoyed this Facebook Live version. My name is Dr. Joel Rosen. I call myself the Adrenal Fatigue Recovery Ninja, and I look forward to ending your adrenal fatigue nightmare. Have a great evening.